Just gonna take a second to let everyone file in. Alrighty, thank you everyone for coming out tonight. I know we're still filing in, but I'll just start my little spiel here. I'm Gracie, I'm the events coordinator for print. A few little housekeeping details before we get started. If you have any questions during the event, please feel free to enter them in the chat box, which is on the bottom right, or in the question and answer function, which is on the bottom bar of your screen. Print is so excited to present the first author reading and Q&A for the Telling Room's latest anthology of student writing, See Beyond. This evening's event will feature 4 live readings from the authors in the book, as well as time for the authors to answer a few questions from the audience. If you'd like a copy of See Beyond, we have plenty in the store. So I'll include the link to the print page right in the chat box, and you can click on through. The night's hosts are both authors in See Beyond themselves, as well as recently published authors of their very own books. Alexa Barstow is the author of Truth Be Cold, a collection of short stories, and Devin Gifford is the author of the dystopian thriller novel, The Unraveling. Take it away, Alexa and Devin.
Thank you so much, Gracie, and thank you to Print for helping make this event happen. We are so excited to share some of the pieces in this amazing collection with you all tonight.
But first, a little background. The Telling Room empowers youth through writing and shares their stories with the world. That's why we're all here tonight. See Beyond is a collection of 27 stories and poems written by youth like us and the 4 readers tonight who work with the Telling Room over the last year. We hope these pieces provide you with the inspiration you need to see beyond 2020 while offering a refuge from the uncertainty and change that may yet be occurring worldwide.
Without further ado, let me present our first reader. Maya Faulstich lives in Yarmouth, Maine as an 8th grader at Frank H. Harrison Middle School. She enjoys challenging herself by using the first line of a poem as inspiration for writing her poem. Give Up is one of many poems she has written in this style. It reflects how involved people can be in their work life, not noticing the beauty in the life outside. Maya enjoys music, Nordic skiing, and writing poetry. Here's Maya reading Give Up.
Give up. Give up sitting dutifully at your desk. There is a world beyond your papers piled miles high. A world beyond the constant clickety-clack of everyone sitting, recording, numbers and meaningless words. If you turned around for one short moment, if you took one breath before you started again, your brow furrowed at the ink, if you paused to refresh your fingers madly clacking away, you might notice the bird at your minuscule office window, trying to sing you a song. If you took a moment to pull up the shade, you might notice how the sun shines and casts a radiant light across the floor. You might notice how stunning the perfectly blue, cloudless sky is if you just opened the door.
So thank you very much, Maya. So next we will hear from Lily Oldershaw, who lives in Raymond, Maine, and is a junior at Wyndham High School. She wrote her poem Green Christmas while mourning the lack of snow during the winters now, as compared to memories from her early childhood. She hopes it will shed light on a topic she is passionate about and allow people to think about climate change from a different perspective. Here's Lily.
Winters, falling over ourselves, plunging sore arms into cold, garage-soaked parkas, breathing from our backs into the stars, even the invisible ones. Red cheeks tumbling down white hills. Frostbite was a minor affliction when we'd been smiling for days. The Saturday sky, pale blue wallpaper taped to the clouds above, a puzzle waiting to be plucked apart, quiet like our hollow house. Sunday's a gray enigma, curling in on itself, hiding from the eager earth, snow tiptoeing around the edges, patient as if waiting for the right time to fall. Christmas wreath, dead on the door, brown needles decorating the snow, like dried blood, hard and pathetic. We played catch with the string of stolen red velvet, slinking to bed early so the truth couldn't find us. The cookies were glued cold to the paper in the morning, a little soft in the center. The rich and poor, as far as we knew, received the same wrapped rewards under rotating rainbow light. Most poor kids were angels, but they got coal anyways. Our first green Christmas, we scooped heaps of dirt in our fists, but they stained our coats and didn't bounce back into their original shape when they fell. Our second, a lonely word perched atop my legal pad list, snow. And Mom still said that global warming is just as real as Santa Claus.
Thank you, Lily. Our last reader this evening is Fiona Stars. A senior at South Portland High School, Fiona found a passion for writing during her time in the Telling Room's Young Writers and Leaders Summer Camp. Her short story, Illuminate, ponders the themes of loss, faith, and finding purpose through the journey of a seemingly simple object, a flashlight. Here is Fiona reading Illuminate.
I am a flashlight, and my only purpose is to end darkness. It's ironic given where I was made, in the darkness of an Eastern European factory, a factory made only of gray concrete surrounded by storm clouds and smog, a byproduct of the manufacturing industry. If anywhere most needed a flashlight, it would be there, but none of us stayed there. Box by box, we were shipped across the world, distributed throughout corner stores, Walmarts, Dollar Generals, and bodegas. I ended up in the United States, specifically Los Angeles, California, the city of angels, the home of the Hollywood sign and Beverly Hills. It felt so opposite to the land I came from. I may have been distracted by the glitz and the glam because as I spent more time in LA, I felt the familiar sadness that was present in the dark little town I came from. For a long time, I sat on the front counter in a small bodega just outside of the city. My bodega was a cozy place. It was the neutral zone of the community. It was a place where everyone, young and old, gathered to talk. It was a place where people felt at home. The owner was a stocky Afro-Colombian man who always smelled of cigar smoke. Everyone called him Tio. He knew everyone and everyone knew him. I felt content with my life there, even though I was a flashlight that never got used. I never yearned to be bought like the other items, especially gum and candy. They were always so desperate to be used. It's ironic considering their fate. There was this one old man I always liked seeing. He came in every day and he always had a smile on his face. He was a chubby guy who had round, happy cheeks and a lively voice. Every day he bought the same thing, dos cervezas y dos cafés. The old man once told Tio that sharing a beer and coffee every day with someone he loved made him happy. I could tell his family meant everything to him. Every couple days he would buy a veladora, a religious candle. He believed that having faith and lighting the candles brought his family protection. He would tell Tio, I am no longer strong enough to protect mi familia, so I trust my faith to keep them safe. After a while, he stopped coming in. The other front counter items and I thought we'd never see him again. Then one day, a young girl and her abuela walked into the bodega. It took me a second to recognize him. His warm skin tone had turned cold and pale. His once bright eyes were surrounded by dark circles, and his smiling lips stretched lifelessly across his face. His granddaughter led him around the store, grabbing a few essentials, stopping ever so often to ask him if he wanted some random thing. He never replied. When they came up to the counter, he stared at a group of veladoras that stood next to me. The candles had a plain smell, nothing special, but across their front was an image of La Virgen de Guadalupe. The candles were beautiful. They were important to the people in the community. Many people believed that they opened a conversation directly with God. Eventually, he reached up to grab a candle, but rather than taking the decorated beacon of hope, he grabbed me. The old man placed me on the counter without so much as a glance towards Tio. Sadness spread across Tio's face. As he looked into the old man's empty eyes, he could see the despair. He could tell the old man was missing something, that he was lost. They used to talk for hours, but the men exchanged only a nod of respect. After his granddaughter purchased the items, the old man picked me up and walked out of the store. The old man held me tight in his hand as we walked. After some time, the California sun began to fade away behind us. The sunlight was replaced by the ever-growing darkness and the ominous glow of the streetlights. The main roads became narrow, and small houses surrounded by metal fencing replaced the tall city buildings. Veladoras lit up many of the windows of the small houses we passed. I wondered why the old man had chosen me over the candle. I only provided light, while Veladoras stand in the window frames, keeping darkness away and offering protection from dangers that lie outside. The old man suddenly turned onto a dirt pathway. His granddaughter followed. His grasp on me tightened as the light from the street faded behind us. His fingers struggled to turn me on, and eventually my light was leading the way. Never had I been used, but in that moment I felt I had a purpose. I led the old man and his granddaughter down a long, winding path. I couldn't see what surrounded us, only what was directly in front. Finally, we stopped at a decrepit park bench. I could still only see a few feet ahead. The structure that stood before us was unidentifiable. The old man handed me to his granddaughter. They took a few more steps forward. Suddenly, our surroundings were illuminated. Ahead of us stood a gravestone. Our surroundings were gray and lacking as much life as what lay underneath. Vibrant bouquets of flowers were scattered around the grave, along with letters and mementos. In a way, they seemed to represent the living who were left behind by the dead. The old man slowly bent down to his knees, using his granddaughter as support to reach the ground. With his hands placed on his lap, he gently closed his eyes and tried to speak. His lips trembled as he struggled to get words out. I could hear the tears caught in the back of his throat. For a moment, he was frozen, stuck trying to keep his tears from coming out. When he finally began to speak, and the words escaped his lips, tears poured down his face. He spoke with a mesmerizing rhythm, as someone who has known pain. Te extraño, mi amor. I miss you, my love. I don't know how I'm going to live without you. I stood straight and silent, glad to be of use in such a dark place as the old man's heart.
Thank you so much, Fiona. And thank you to all of our authors. I'd like to give them a round of applause. So great to hear you all read in your own voices.
So we're going to open it up now for questions from the audience. So go ahead and send your questions in. While we're waiting for those to come in, Devin and I will ask a question each. So my question for the authors is whether you have a favorite line in your story or poem.
Does anyone want to go first? Or does anyone have an answer immediately?
I was just looking through it again really quickly to see, but I think I really liked the last line. There's a lot of things that I like about this piece that I wrote, not to be too confident, but yeah, I really like the last line, and I think that was one of the last editions I had. Like, this piece went through like such a large transformation throughout the time that I worked on it, and I just really like that addition. It really ties the story together in a heartfelt manner. Yeah.
Fiona, someone in the chat wanted to see, could you read the last line?
Yeah. Okay. Te extraño, mi amor. I miss you, my love. I don't know how I'm going to live without you. I stood straight and silent, glad to be of use in such a dark place as the old man's heart.
I can definitely see why you love that line. It's really, really good. Maya or Lily, do you have a favorite line from your pieces?
I think one of my favorites is probably like the last line of the first stanza, which is, breathing from our backs into the stars, even the invisible ones. And I don't know why I like it. I guess I just really like the imagery of it.
Yeah, I would say your entire poem had some really strong images, and that was definitely one that stood out to me, at least.
Thanks.
Yeah. Maya, do you have anything you want to share?
I think I really like the part in my poem where I write, if you took a moment to pull up the shade, you might notice how the sun shines and casts a radiant light across the floor. And I just kind of like that image of the sun shining through the window and the light on the floor, because that's just something that like I'm really familiar with. So I really like that. Yeah.
Okay. My question was about if any of you have a favorite part of the writing process. So whoever has an answer can answer first.
My favorite part of the writing process is the first part, where you just kind of get your ideas out, because all the other parts is sort of more like editing and redrafting it, which is cool. But my favorite part is when I get to put the ideas in my head onto paper, and then they're real, then they're really there, and I'm not gonna forget them.
Honestly, I would definitely have to agree with that. At first I was gonna say like editing, because I really like kind of like the like being able to tweak your ideas a little bit and make them into something better. But like kind of when you're in like, I don't know if the right word is like a trance, and like you're just like writing and writing and writing, and like everything seems so clear, and like your like imagination is like really like alive. That's what I really like about writing. And I think I remember reading an essay by Virginia Woolf, and it talked about that similar thing. And yeah, it just felt really real, like when you're just in that flow of writing, and it's really enjoyable. Yeah.
I think my favorite part is definitely like after I get all my ideas down and then I get to look back on it, because it's kind of like surprising that I actually wrote that. Like I'm just kind of surprised with myself, and I'm like, wow, I just wrote that. And like, yeah, it's just cool to look back on once you kind of get out of the heat of the moment of writing.
Great. So we're going to start taking questions from the audience. So one of our first questions is, how do you guys get your sensory details for your pieces? Where do you dig those out of?
I guess I can go first. I think for me, especially when I'm writing like nonfiction or like about experiences that happen to me, it's just the sensory details come from the moment, and kind of just really dissecting in my head what that moment felt like to me, so that I can effectively portray that to the reader. And I think also the same thing with fiction, because even though it may not actually be moments in my life, like they're often universal feelings that like I'm describing, or I don't know, somewhat similar moments to what I've experienced in my life. So just really being able to like describe what I feel and how the moment is like portrayed to me. Yeah.
I usually imagine the setting, and then I sort of like describe how I feel in that setting, but through how it looks or how you feel, but sort of tying them together. Yeah, that's usually where I get my sensory details from.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Maya. Like I focus a lot on the setting with my sensory details, and just like picture myself in that setting, and just kind of like try to immerse myself in what that would feel like in my body, and then try to describe that in words the best that I can.
Another question I just got is, what does it mean for you to be a published writer?
Well, like when I first found out that my piece was going to be in the anthology, it was just like, I don't know what the right word is, but it just felt like really amazing because like, so when I first wrote this piece, it was like really long, like a lot longer than it is here. And so I wanted to enter like the contest like that the telling room has, and I think the winner from that contest like goes in the anthology, but I'm not sure. And so like I worked on it trying to pare it down, and I couldn't pare it down to the word limit for the contest, and I was so disappointed. And then like a month or two later, like I found out that my piece was like chosen to be in the anthology without having to like enter into the contest. And like that was just, it was just so like, I can't think of the right word, but I think gratifying is the right word. But yeah, it just felt really good. And I don't know, now I can brag to people, yeah, I'm a published author.
I think for me, it just feels, I feel really happy because I feel like now my work is going to be like, you know, it's sort of out in the world and other people can read it too. And I really like the fact that I get to share what is in my head and my words with other people so that they can enjoy it too.
It feels like really surreal to me because when I was younger and like picturing myself getting published, I didn't think it was going to be for like a long, long time. So it feels really crazy to have it happen now. And also kind of like, it's really cool just to be able to say that I'm published. Like, before, if you say like, oh, I like writing, then since I'm just a teenager, no one really takes it seriously. But if you say like my writing's in a book, then they're gonna kind of be taken aback a little bit and think it's actually something to be impressed by, I guess.
So, speaking of other published authors, do you have a favorite author or someone you draw inspiration from for your own writing?
I love poetry, and I think my favorite poet is Maya Angelou, not really because we share the same first name, but just also because she's a really amazing poet, and I love the power of her writing. It really strikes me as just, it's gorgeous. So she's someone that I really look up to and inspire and inspired by, yeah.
My favorite author, I actually can't pronunciate her name. But I've really like grown to like her work. She wrote the book My Sister is a Serial Killer, and I think that's been pretty popular like in the past year. And yeah, I don't know, something about the way she like at least evoked feeling in me. It was just really interesting. Um and like that's one thing that I aspire to do, is to be able to really like describe these universal feelings to people so that they can relate, but in a very detail oriented way. And like yeah oh, I also like shoot, I can't remember her name either, but Children of Blood and Water, I think it's called. That is an amazing series, and I just love the way that's written. But yeah.
Even though I write poetry, I actually never really read poetry, so I don't really have a favorite poet. But as far as fiction goes, one of my favorite authors, I mean, it changes like every month, but like my favorite author right now is called Jandy Nelson, and I'm looking up there because it's on my shelf. And she's the author of I'll Give You the Sun, and it's one of my favorite books ever. So yeah, and I just really like the way that she describes everything. Like her voice is so unique, and each character has its own distinct voice, and I really love that.
Another question here is, do you have any creative hobbies or outlets that assist you in your writing?
I don't really think I have any like hobbies that assist it, but like one thing I do to kind of like get my brain flowing to like help my creativity is like just going to like random word generator and generating like 2 to 3 words and having to create a story or like fiction or nonfiction with those 3 words included. And that usually is pretty eventful and gets me into the mood of writing.
As my bio said, I really like to borrow first lines from other people's poems. So I won't read the whole poem, I'll just read the first line. Then I'll write my own poem, like based on that first line. Then I'll go back and see what they did and just kind of see what we did differently. And yeah, that's how I wrote Give Up. Yeah. So that's always a fun thing to do if I'm stuck. I also like experimenting with different styles of poetry. So a lot of times I write free verse, but if there's like a certain layout that I have to follow, then that's fun too, to try to like expand my, I don't know, knowledge and creativity.
I don't know if I have any like creative hobbies that help with my writing, but I'm always inspired by reading other writers' work, and I feel like I always kind of borrow ideas from other people in my own writing, and that's something that's really helped me.
Another good question we have from the audience is, when you're writing your pieces, do you like to plan them out, or do you usually just let them unfold as you're writing them?
So for me, it kind of depends on what I'm writing, but if it's a poem, then I usually just let it unfold, kind of let the idea unfold. If it's a story, then I usually plan it a little bit more. But I don't know, poetry for me is more about expressing what's inside of me, and less about layout and that kind of thing, which I usually work on after I've written down my ideas.
Yeah, I totally agree with what Maya said. Like, I just try and get it all out, and then after I'm done writing it, go back and fix anything that doesn't make sense and try and make it into a more cohesive story. And yeah, that's my process.
Yeah, that's normally what I do too. Or I write the beginning of a story and then I like plan out what I'm going to like how I'm gonna change the layout in order to go with my message for the final piece, which is basically what Maya and Lily said, but yeah.
An 8-year-old audience member has asked, do you have any advice for younger writers or fellow young writers?
My advice is just keep writing and keep reading. Like, the more you write, the better you get. And a lot of times I look back on my work from years ago and I'm like, this is so bad. Why did I even write this? But you know, it's really the process. The more you write, the better you get. So if you want to get good at writing, just keep doing it.
Yeah, I totally agree. And also one thing that really helps is to share your writing with others. Like, just read it to people, ask them what they think, and try and take their advice as much as you can, like, and try and implement that into your writing, because that's one of the best ways to improve too.
For me, when I was younger, I really, really hated writing. Like, I'm not gonna lie, not until like my freshman year did I like develop like really liking it. And it was because I had a really difficult time like really putting what was in my head, like the millions of thoughts in my head on paper. And I also think school was, when I was younger, was like the only way that I was writing. So don't let school take the fun away from it for you. Just do it for yourself. And don't worry about the end result, and don't put too much pressure on yourself, because that usually like messes with your writing flow and your end product. So yeah, use it as a way to relax. And yeah.
So another question we've had from the audience is, do you picture a certain reader in your head when you're writing your pieces?
This may sound kind of odd, but I usually picture myself. So like if most of my writing relates to me in some way. So like if I'm writing it, I'm usually writing it for me. But sometimes it is written like for something or someone else, but most of the time I write because I like to write, and when I'm writing I mainly just picture what's happening in the work, not necessarily like whoever will be reading it, because when I'm writing usually I want sort of others to feel how I feel in my writing, so I kind of picture what it feels like for me, but it's different for everyone, so yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I do the same thing. Just writing about myself and like my experiences, and hoping that someone will relate to it when they read it. And sometimes I'm writing to a specific person in my life. Usually they'll never actually end up reading it or seeing it. It's more for me, but yeah, that's usually the only time when I'm writing to a pointed audience.
Yeah, I agree. I pretty much just write for myself. So whenever I write, I'm not really planning on sharing it to anyone. So if I do end up sharing it, it's only really after it gets out there that I start to picture what people might think of it. Like in the initial process when I'm just writing it, I don't picture anyone reading it.
All right, I think we'll do one more question. Someone asked, what is a sense that you feel you might miss in your writing? Like, what's a sensory detail that you kind of have to think about to include it?
For me, the one sense that is really hard to include sometimes is taste, because really the only time that I'm writing about it is when I'm either talking about food or the ocean, because when I'm near the ocean, you can taste the salt air. But other than that, and food. But it's hard if I'm writing about, say, my give up poem. Like it would be hard to incorporate taste into that, because I guess maybe you can taste the air coming through the window if you open it, but it's not something that I automatically think of when I start writing. So it would be something that I'd have to like incorporate afterwards.
I can't really think of like a specific sense that I have trouble writing about, but sometimes I do have the tendency to bring in like cliche like phrases when describing like an emotion or like a sense. So like I really have to like work against that a lot and try to be creative with how I'm framing it.
Yeah, I don't know if I have a specific sense that I have trouble like bringing into my writing, but sometimes I focus too much on sensory details in general that I just abandon the plot completely. So like what I'm trying to work on now is focusing less on sensory details and more on the actual point of the story that I'm writing.
I feel like I do that a lot too.
All right, I think we've reached the end of our Q&A. Let's all give a big round of applause for our readers. Small round of applause, but it's very meaningful.
So I think we're wrapping up. They might be putting up a graphic for Swarm, which is another telling room program that is starting up soon. Registration is open until this Friday, I believe, and it's a program for writers aged 10 to 18, and anyone in the state of Maine can participate because it will be happening virtually. And I participated in Swarm this past summer, and it was a really great experience where you got to meet a lot of young writers who you would never get to meet otherwise because you live in totally different parts of the state, and it challenges you in new ways. I just finished a lot of writing when I did it, and I was worried it would stress me out, but it was a really good environment to get more feedback on and just be a better writer in general. And there's the cool little graphic, so you can see the hives. I was in hive number 1, and I got to meet writers all over Maine, and it was overall just a really great experience. We worked in personal narrative for my group, which I don't usually write in, and I'm very glad I did it. So definitely recommend, if you're looking for more writing opportunities, that you take a chance on Swarm.
Okay, thanks everyone for coming. Thank you to our authors for sharing your incredible writing today, and congratulations on being published in the See Beyond anthology. I hope everybody goes and checks that out. I have it, it's very amazing. And you're all very inspiring young writers. Thanks to everyone who attended for supporting the youth voices at the Telling Room.